Let's talk tools. And no, I do not mean the American slang for an insecure man. And no, I do not mean a chainsaw and a drill. I mean makeup tools. I am not professional, just want to start by saying that, but I have been a makeup lover and a makeup user for the past maybe like 15 years of my life. And I'm going to talk through all of my favorite makeup brushes and other methods of application for each step of my makeup, and hopefully this will be helpful. I will leave everything linked down below. I just would like to say over the years I have been gifted multiple different brushes and sponges and stuff. I can't quite remember every single one that was gifted and every single one that I bought. There is a mixture of ones that I've purchased and ones that I've been sent, but this video is not sponsored. And if you like this kind of video, please give this a thumbs up. It really helps me out. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love to have you. And let me know down below what your favorite makeup brushes are, because there's so many on the market now. Let's do it. Face is moisturized. I'm not going to bother priming because I'm not leaving the house today. So when it comes to foundation and tinted moisturizers and stuff, there's a few different ways that I like to apply them. I do love a good sponge. My favorite sponges are from, it used to be called Cocoa Cosmetics by Chloe. They're now called Clomana, but it's their marshmallow sponges. These ones are like the squishiest ones that I've tried, and I've used them for years now. And I found they've stood the test of time. I wash my sponge every time I use it, and I don't find that these break easily as long as you're gentle with them. If you're looking for something a little bit more budget friendly, I like the Real Techniques sponge, the original orange one. That one's pretty good. Also, Eco Tools make a really nice purple sponge. That one's also really nice. But sponges can definitely make a big difference. I reckon if you can find one of these on special offer, they quite often do like deals on TikTok and stuff. Or if you would just like to invest in a good sponge, I mean, I think for one of these sponges it's £9. So compared to like the original Beauty Blender brand, those ones were like 20 quid each. And in my opinion, these are a lot better. But if I'm applying something like a tinted moisturizer, which I am going to today, I generally don't use a sponge because I find that it can absorb a bit too much of the product. But if it's like a fuller coverage foundation, then I will use a sponge to apply it. It kind of just depends. And also sometimes depends how I'm feeling. In terms of foundation brushes, you can get something that's a bit more of like a stipple brush, but the bristles are a little bit less dense. And this I find gives a slightly lighter application. And sometimes I use something like this, or just a bit more of a fluffier brush. Can you see how it's not as like densely packed and it's a little bit more movable? I use something like this if I want a little bit less coverage and I want like a nice wash all over my face, which I've been doing a lot recently. This brush was from MUA years ago and I still actually have it, so that's a really affordable brush. And this one is from Spectrum. It's the A32 brush from the Nightmare Before Christmas collection, but I think they do make this in other collections as well. But anything kind of similar to these, if you want like a really nice brush that you can sort of like work into all of your nooks and crannies of your nose and smile lines and all of that and distribute the product quite evenly. And I also really like Spectrum as a brand for brushes. They make lots of sets and they are a little bit more expensive than, you know, like MUA brushes or ELF brushes, but they're really nice quality. I've had some Spectrum brushes for years and they've lasted really, really well. So that kind of brush just gives a nice wash of color. These ones are a little bit more densely packed. I also like to use if I want a little bit more of a full coverage, and I generally tend to like stipple a little bit more with these. One again that has lasted for years is the Real Techniques. It says 200 on it, and I believe this is the Expert Foundation brush. I did actually wash all of my brushes that I'm showing you today and they all look lovely. And yeah, I've got to say, I've washed this many, many times and it has lasted really well. Real Techniques brushes, again, I really like the quality of, but by using something a little bit more dense and kind of like stamping the product on, it gives a little bit more coverage, I find anyway. Don't really think you'll be able to tell too much because I don't, touch wood, don't actually have too many like acne breakouts or scars at the minute. My skin is kind of doing great on my face. I mean, the rest of my body's with this rash that I've got. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then maybe check my previous video. So I love that one. I also really like these two. These ones are a little bit more expensive, but the Rare Beauty foundation brush and also the Fenty Beauty 125 face brush, these are both very similar actually in terms of the shape. The Rare Beauty one's a little bit more dense. They're both really nice and really soft, and also I've washed these a fair few times as well and so far not had any shedding with these. I was using the ELF putty brush for maybe like the past year or two, and I really like that brush. It's very affordable. However, the most recent time I washed it before this video, the bristles started falling out. So I guess if you're paying for a much more affordable brush, generally, not always, but generally they probably won't last as long as something that you pay a little bit more money for. Although I've had some more expensive brushes that also haven't lasted as well. But if you're wanting some ones that you can rely on, these are really good. And Real Techniques, probably my favorite out of the three. Those kind of brushes also really good for cream contour, cream bronzer, cream blush, cream highlight, that kind of thing. When it comes to concealer, I'm very much a sponge kind of person, and the sponges that I mentioned before, I love those to apply my concealer. I just find that it's a little bit easier to kind of get really up in there and smooth everything out. And also I will then kind of go back over the whole of my face just in case there's any brush streaks. Very occasionally I will use a little brush for my concealer, mostly like if I've got like a big like acne scar or something that I'm trying to cover, I might pat on a bit of concealer. And sometimes if I can't be asked to go and wash my sponge, I will use a concealer brush under my eyes. These two brushes are really nice, but any sort of small fluffy brush will do as well. Like even an eyeshadow brush, like something that looks a little bit like this can work really nicely for concealer. This is a Morphe brush from the Makeup by Ariel collection. Love, love, love these brushes. These two are a bit more expensive. The Bare Minerals Shade and Diffuse Eye Brush kind of looks like a thin stippling brush, but I find this works really nicely under the eyes, and also like on any blemishes and things. Just if you are using a brush on your blemishes, make sure that you're washing it. And then Rare Beauty came out with like a mini version of the foundation brush. This I think is just the concealer brush. It doesn't have a name on here, but this was designed to look like a finger so that you can pat your concealer on under your eyes. So if anybody is a brush kind of person for concealer, this is a really nice brush actually. It's also really good for nose contour, like cream nose contour. But generally I just go for my sponge because it's a lot quicker for me to get like a nice smooth blend. Like, do you see how quick that was to just blend out? Oh no, that was the wrong shade. Oh, that shade doesn't match me at all. Oops. So when it comes to cream products, cream bronzer, cream blush, again, I would just use the same base brushes. I don't have anything particularly fancy for these. Just using my little Made by Mitchell curve case. And again, you can use a sponge for this. I just quite like to use a brush and sort of pat my cream products on top of my foundation or skin tint or whatever I've used. Yeah, I've just been loving this Spectrum one recently. I don't know why. It just kind of gives a slightly lighter coverage, I guess, which I quite like when it comes to cream bronzer. I really hope they sell this brush individually. I just like this one because it's a little bit smaller than, for example, this one, which is a Laura Lee brush. However, if you're somebody that contours your nose, I would highly suggest using a smaller brush for this, and this is probably the brush that I get the most questions about. This is a brush from Morphe. It's from their vegan collection, and I have to say, I love Morphe's brushes in terms of like the bristle quality. The vegan collection brushes and the Makeup by Ariel brushes are some of the nicest brushes that I own in terms of like the way that they apply my makeup. But the thing that I hate about my Morphe brushes is that after you've had them a while and after you've washed them a few times, the like paint on the top of the handle, at the bottom of the handles are fine, but the paint on the top of the handles has started to peel off, which really bugs me because then they look gross. Like, look, this is just, why? I mean, actually, the whole thing just peeled off. Now I don't have such an ugly looking brush. But now it's not all black anymore and people are probably gonna get confused what this brush is. That bugs me about my Morphe brushes. So the actual handle quality, not the best. And I have to say, some of my older Morphe brushes, I had some issues with shedding, but the ones from the recent collections that I've had, particularly the vegan collection and the Ariel collection, I've had no problems with shedding, which is amazing. It is the V105 brush, right? The V105 brush on the Morphe website. And when I've seen this in stores now, they seem to have changed it to be like a rounded brush, but mine is a flat top, dense little brush, which I've seen people using for concealer, but I love this for nose contour because it gives you the straight line already. It's just the best little brush for nose contour. Let me just compare it to the Rare Beauty one actually, which is still great. You kind of have to drag it down your nose a little bit more. I mean, it still does a really good job. I just always go back to that Morphe one. I don't know though, if anybody knows of another brush, let me know in the comments. Really boring, but same kind of brush for my cream blush, and I just like to pat with these kind of brushes so that I don't move too much of my foundation underneath. When it comes to powder and powder brushes, I used to be such a brush person and I would only use brushes under my eyes until I discovered powder puffs. Powder puffs have changed the way that my powder looks, especially under my eyes. I love the Trigwell Cosmetics powder puffs, and before I had these I was using some from Primark, which were like round ones, not the tiny little round ones that are really thin. They were like thicker round ones that were more of like a plush texture. But I'm sure there are so many on the market. Morphe makes a nice one as well actually, like a square squishy one. But my favorite ones that I've used are the Trigwell ones. I know that everyone uses these. Chloe as well, from Coco Cosmetics by Chloe, which is now Clomana. She also has a powder puff, which is nice. You know what? I'm gonna use this today. I think this is £6. It's either £6 or £8. I'll talk about cleaning my brushes and sponges at the end of the video. Let's use my Chloe one today. And I'm gonna do this on one side. So just pat out those creases. I've already dipped it into some powder, and then just really push up all into those eye creases. And I would do the same on my eyelid. However, if I am going to use a brush, which is very rare, I will do the same and then take a small brush like this. This one again is from the Makeup by Ariel collection with Morphe. And I'll just use a small sort of pointed brush to set my under eyes. It sort of looks like a highlighter brush. It's called the A14 brush. That's mostly what I use, and for the rest of my face, I'm not really fussy. I'll show you a few powder brushes that I like, but you could honestly use anything. Just any kind of fluffy big brush I then use to set the rest of my face. Actually, these two are kind of smaller ones if you're looking for something that's a little bit more precise. This is the Morphe 2. Oh my god, it doesn't have a name. It's from the Morphe 2 collection, just like a small domed brush. This one is by Laura Lee Los Angeles. If you're in the US, Laura makes some really good brushes actually. I love her brushes. This is another one from Laura Lee Los Angeles, which I quite often use for powder to just set the rest of my face, but it's like an angled brush. You could use this for powder, you could use it for contour, bronzer, you could use it for blush. Most brands sell a brush like this and they are quite handy to have. Again, the Morphe Makeup by Ariel brush. This is the A58 brush, which is really nice for powder and also I guess for like contour, bronzer. Spectrum, this one is from Nightmare Before Christmas collection and it's got a little bow tie on it. And then finally, this one is by a brand called Refer, which is spelt like this. And I have to say, Refer brushes are some of my favourite brushes that I've ever used, particularly when it comes onto the eye brushes. But these face brushes are also so nice. When it comes to bronzer, again, you can use an angled brush like this. Spectrum make brushes like this. Iconic London make brushes like this. Beauty Bay also makes some affordable brushes. Real Techniques probably make a nice bronzer brush. And I would trust all of those brands. The ones that I find myself gravitating towards the most are these sort of bigger, slightly tapered, bigger, fluffy bronzer brushes that look more like this shape. This one is the Bare Minerals Seamless Shaping and Finish brush, which I really like. I have to say, this one has shed on me a little bit, but only a little bit. And I've had this for a good few years now, and I do like that bronzer brush. But this is the Vive 127 powder and bronze brush. I find myself reaching for this brush all the time for my bronzer, mostly because the tapered shape and the fluffiness, I find it easy to kind of like blend my bronzer without it looking too crazily harsh. I know that some people for their bronzer like a more fan style brush, which looks something like this. I personally don't use those, but I know that a lot of people like those, so I mean, nothing's stopping you from trying one of those. I just like the way that this kind of diffuses the bronzer. I am a nose contour lover, and I know that not everyone is, and that's totally fine. You do not have to contour your nose. But when it comes to powder nose contour, I generally use one of three things. Either a just fluffy eyeshadow brush. This tends to do the job quite well. Again, this one's from the Ariel collection, the A11 Morphe brush. Or a slightly more flat eyeshadow brush that's still quite fluffy. This one is the A20 from Morphe. This is really good actually for getting like a really precise nose contour. Or if you're wanting to cheat the system, go for a brush like this. This one is from Iconic London, but I know that other brands make these kind of flat brushes. It's literally a straight line for you already. This is the Iconic London. It doesn't have a name, but it comes in their face brush set. And again, I have to say, I've had my Iconic London brushes for years now, and they've washed really well. They've survived really well. I haven't really had any shedding with them. This is quite a dense one though, so you want to go quite light-handed, otherwise you end up with a pretty intense nose contour. But I mean, look at that. But that's what I'm going for today. I want an intense nose contour. And then sometimes I'll look in the mirror and be like, ooh, that's a bit much. And then I'll go back in with my powder brush. For powder blush, again, you can use something like this. I keep coming back to these angled brushes, but they're just so handy to have. My favorite my favorite blush brush of all time is the Morphe and Ariel A22 brush. I mean, mine looks disgusting because of all this chipped paint that really bugs me. And the bristles have started to sort of spread out a little bit, but that's because it's so fluffy. Just for comparison, like this is a regular sort of highlighter brush. This is the size of the blush brush. Oh my god. The reason I love this is because it is so soft, so you can dip into blush, and then like diffuse it over your whole sort of cheek. And I do it in like these soft circular motions, and oh my god, it's just my favorite. It's probably my favorite brush to use. I find it so satisfying. Like, look. And then you can also, I also use this for my highlighter now because I spread it out all over my cheek a little bit more. It just gives the best blushing effect. I add my blush to my nose with this and I love it. It's just the best little brush. If you're looking for a more precise highlight down the center of your nose or for your inner corners, you can use any small eyeshadow brush will do. Any like domed small eyeshadow brush. I've got some from Beauty Bay. I've got an iconic London one. Most brush sets will come with a small domed brush that works really well for center of the nose highlight, which is very specific. Oh, this is from Unicorn Cosmetics. They had a really nice brush set and I use this quite often. This one is from Lauralee Los Angeles, just to get a nice little precise nose highlight and on the inner corners and on the brow bone if you want to do that as well. I forgot to speak about this brush. This is the Morphe V115, which is also a really nice blush brush. I don't use this as much since I discovered that Ariel one because this one's a little bit more dense, but it's also a really nice blush and highlighter and bronzer brush. My OG favorite highlighter brush, which I have used for years and years and years, and again, Zoeva brushes have never let me down. This is the Zoeva 134 Luxe Powder Fusion brush. I've got maybe like 4 or 5 of them in my collection. If you're wanting a little bit more of a precise highlighter application, these little brushes are the best, and again, such good quality. My Zoeva brushes have all lasted so well, so even though they're more expensive, I don't have problems with them shedding. And then also this little Morphe 2 brush is a really nice little highlighter brush as well. It has no name on it, but it did come in like one of the face sets. I don't really fill in my eyebrows with a brow powder or pomade anymore. However, if you do, I love the Benefit eyebrow brush. I love the Vive 227 angled brush, which also comes with this tiny skinny, this is probably the thinnest one that I've got. Like Jamie Genevieve, she knows, but this has also got a spoolie on the end. This is also so good for a winged liner. It's also good for like cleaning up your eyeshadow if you want it in a more sharp shape. You can use this to do a little concealer. You can use it to do concealer around your eyebrows, as long as you're not using the same brush to do your brow thing and then concealer, because that would probably get a little bit messy and gross. But this Vive brush is just so thin and skinny. It's like a little like, it's just great. And also as well, the Zoeva 317 wing liner brush. This is also a very slim little eyebrow brush if you do fill in your brows with a pomade or a powder and you're looking for like a skinny one. Those 3 I would recommend. More expensive, but I've got to say the cheaper angled brushes that I've tried, they just don't cut it. They just don't cut it. They're too thick and they will give you a slug. Oh my gosh, wait, sorry. The Made by Mitchell angled brush as well. This one is the ME7. I'm guessing like Mitchell I7. This is the tiniest, like you can barely see it. It's the tiniest little angled brush, and again, it's super skinny. I love this for a little like winged eyeliner or like a smudgy eyeliner, but I could imagine that would also be really good in your eyebrows. So when it comes to eyeshadow, it really depends what you want to do with your eyeshadow, but I really think the bare minimum that I think that you need is a flat eyeshadow brush and a very nice fluffy eyeshadow brush that's quite soft and not too dense. These are where you want to start, because with a flat eyeshadow brush, not only can you pack on shimmers onto your lid, you can also use this on your inner corners. You can pack on a darker shade on your outer corners, but I wouldn't recommend trying to blend with a flat, dense, hard brush like this one. This one is from an iconic London set, again, one of their eye sets. This fluffy brush, which is one of my faves, is the Morphe and Ariel A11 brush, which is so good for blending. And I mean, this is like the absolute bare minimum. You can also use this one on your lower lash line as well. And you can do a look with this. If I was like in a pinch, I could do a look with 2 brushes. That's fine. Let me just go through some of the fluffy brushes that I have. I recently tried an eye brush set from Carla Cosmetics and I really like these. This one is more of like a domed fluffy brush, which is really nice for blending out colors in your crease. This one is slightly more flat brush, but it's still fluffy, so you can use this to blend, you can use it to put on shimmers. It's a little bit of a bigger brush. That would actually be really nice for nose contour. I've got 2 of the Zoeva 228 Luxe Crease brushes. These again have lasted me so well. They are both, I mean, it's the same brush, just a different design. These are so good for blending out matte eyeshadows, shimmer eyeshadows, and just like diffusing any shades that you want to diffuse. This one is kind of similar. It's the Morphe M441 brush. Again, a nice fluffy brush, not quite as soft, not as tapered as the Zoeva brushes, and it's also started to spread out a little bit more, but still a good brush that I've had for years. Lauralee Los Angeles also make nice brushes. This is a nice fluffy brush as well. The Zoeva Luxe Soft Crease 221 brush. This one is just like a non-tapered version, which again, very nice and soft, not too densely packed, so you get like a really nice soft diffuse with it. Zoeva makes some great eye brushes and just brushes all around. They're a really good brand. I missed off this little Morphe one as well, the A20 from the Ariel collection. This one is fluffy and I use this to put colours on the outer corners and to kind of blend and also to put on shimmers and also for my nose contour. A really good all-rounder. If you're looking to get a little bit more professional with your eyeshadow and you want more precision, which for me, I think precision blending brushes took my eyeshadow to the next level and stopped it looking as messy, I guess. Smaller blending brushes will help you out a lot. And some of my favourites for these are by the brand called Refer that I mentioned before. They sent me some of their brushes a while ago. I think it was actually a couple of years ago now. These are such nice quality and they do these diddy little blending brushes, number 13 and number 14, where you can really like get into that crease of your eye. You can really get colours like right exactly where you want them and then use a bigger brush to blend out. They're just so good. I think they're quite expensive, but they're really nice. Recently as well, Glisten Cosmetics came out with some little diddy blending brushes. These are also so good for precision. They're a little bit more floppy and like soft than the Refer ones. So I don't know, they don't quite, you need to do a little bit more work because in some cases they're a little bit too precise. They're also really good for like tiny little details and like small blends. The Refer 15 and 10 brushes are also really good. These ones are just like slightly bigger blending brushes. And there's some other small ones. Unicorn Cosmetics does a really nice little small precise one which looks like this. And then this one is the Morphe Vegan V206 brush, which again is a really nice like slightly more precise blending brush. In my opinion, the more blending brushes you have, the more professional your eyeshadow will probably look. It's also so good to have a clean one on hand so you can maybe use one to apply an eyeshadow and then use another to like blend it out just with the clean brush to like smudge it and blend it out a lot more evenly. Let's actually put something on my eyes, shall we? Also, I've got to say Beauty Bay makes some really good eye brushes as well. I didn't wash mine. They are in like my makeup pots somewhere. Spectrum also makes some really nice brushes. For my outer corner, I generally tend to go for one that's a little bit more flat but is still kind of fluffy. This one is the Ariel A22. This one is the Carla Cosmetics K21 brush. So I'm just going to use that actually. Why not, eh? Let's take the shade Cereal from my Super Spice palette, which I've not actually used in bloody ages. And I'm just going to pack that on. So I like to have a brush to kind of pack on the colour. Actually, maybe I want to wing that out slightly. And you can do, I guess, like a tiny bit of a blend with this brush. But I will then move on to something like the Zoeva blending brush. Dip into a slightly lighter brown shade and use that to blend out that colour and like just diffuse the edges and make it a lot more blended and pretty and less chunky. Then I like to have some kind of flat brush. Again, that iconic London one that I mentioned at the start is great for shimmers. This one is from Beauty Bay, the Hey Shorty brush. Really good for packing on shimmers, like a flat, relatively dense brush. This one is from Lily England, the 130 brush. Another really good one of a very similar shape. Refer also have a flat brush, the 021, which again, great for packing on shimmers. I'm just repeating myself. Carla Cosmetics, the K20 brush. Also the Morphe 2 eye brush set has another really nice one as well. These are all kind of very similar and I'm sure Real Techniques probably does one similar too. I'm going to use the Beauty Bay one and I'm just going to take some of the shade Dreamy, which is a shimmer. Also, to be honest, quite often for my shimmers I like using my finger and I will just use a brush if I, don't want to get my fingers dirty or need it to be a bit more precise. Generally find that using your finger, yes, even with long nails, there are ways, just can work really nicely for shimmer shades. If you are doing a cut crease where you are taking a concealer or an eye base and like literally cutting the shape out of your eyelid and you need something really precise, the best brush that I found for this is again from the Ariel collection from Morphe and it's the A18 brush. I think Ariel, because he's a makeup artist, he just knows like what brushes you need. This is such a thin little rounded brush that is the perfect cut crease brush. Also really good if you like to carve out your eyebrows or like clean up any mistakes because it is so thin. It is just the best cut crease brush. It's so good. And then when it comes to your lower lash line or doing like a smoky little upper lash line or just like a smoky kind of wing, a little pointed tapered brush is probably going to be your best friend. NARS make a nice one, but this one's a little bit thicker though, so it's probably better for doing like a more intense smoky eye, but it's like a slightly pointed dense eyeshadow brush. How many times have I said the word dense in this video? Refer the 03 brush, so good. It's slightly pointed, so it's really good for doing like a little smoky wing. wing. Charlotte Tilbury, they do also make some really nice eyeshadow brushes, but they're really expensive. But this little eyeliner brush, it's so teeny tiny and so good for doing like a little smoky wing. It's like, look, it's so small. Morphe and Madison Beer collection had a really nice like small flat brush, which is so good for your inner corners, and also a little smoky little wing thing. They also make a really nice angled brush, which I'll mention in a minute. And again, L'Oreal Los Angeles, nice little smoky blender, also really good for nose highlight, that kind of thing. I spoke about all my angled brushes already for my eyeshadow, but just one to add to the collection. The Morphe and Madison Beer do a really nice skinny angled brush, but this one has started to kind of spread out a little bit, whereas the others haven't. Like, it's not held its shape as well. And then if you're doing a graphic eyeliner, the only brushes that I'll recommend are Glisten Cosmetics. This one was from the Maytami collection, which has got like a little dotting tool on one end and like this fine eyeliner brush on the other end. But oh my god, yeah, if you're doing a graphic eyeliner shape, I cannot recommend Glisten Cosmetics, the eyeliners, like the wet liners and the brushes enough. This is the number 7 brush, but like, just look how tiny it is. I'm gonna use my Vive brush and I'm gonna take the shade Brownies, kind of matching my hoodie today, and I'm just gonna pack this onto my lash line and show you that this can get a really nice sharp wing. Or if you're using a gel liner or something, this would be such a good brush for that. And then if you wanted to do something like this and smoke it out, you can use a teeny tiny little blender brush and do like a smoky little wing. I mostly use these kind of smaller blending brushes when I'm using loads of different colors or like bright colors. Generally when I'm using neutrals, I don't tend to bother as much, if I'm honest. I want to give you a demo of these Glisten brushes. I've not used my wet liners in a while. This was the Glisten and the Clay Drop little like cow palette. I don't even know if this is still available, but I'm going to use one of the blue shades from this, but they do sell the shades individually, I think. I don't know what I'm doing, but you can see how tiny this little brush is, and it's just so good for this kind of detail. Well, that definitely gets harder when you've not done it in a few months. But like, the precision of this graphic liner brush, it's doesn't compare to anything else. I don't really use a lip brush. The only other kinds of brushes that I would potentially recommend are like a little flat brush like this. These generally come in handy for things like cleaning up eyeshadow mistakes with a little bit of concealer, or I guess like cleaning up around your lips. This one is the Zoeva Precision Smudger brush, which again, yeah, you can use this for eyeshadow as well, along your lash line or like along your lower lash line, like to get a really precise little smudgy line as it suggests. And also again, Makeup by Ariel makes one, which is for concealer specifically. So you can use this to either pack on or like paint on your concealer, or to clean up your brows with the slightly bigger, softer side, or with the more precise side. You could again use this to like carve out your eyebrows, which I think this is what this is for. And it is the A19 brush. I'm gonna put some mascara on and do my lips, and then I'll show you how I clean my brushes. So I'm just doing my mascara, which I'm using the Milani highly rated lash extension tubing mascara today. The only other thing that I really want to talk about is things like lash curlers, applying lashes and applying gems, because that might also be quite helpful. My favorite lash curlers that I've tried are the House of Lashes ones, which look like this, but I have to say I don't curl my lashes super frequently. My lashes are quite naturally curled, so I'm probably not the best person to ask about lash curlers, but I really like these ones. They seem to do a good job. When it comes to applying lashes, I would highly recommend getting something like these instead of regular tweezers. I find these a little bit easier. These are the Kiss lash applicators, and you can just pick up your lashes because they're a little bit more like, I don't know, shaped like a lash. You can pick up more of the lash instead of sharp tweezers, and they're like more rounded, so less likely to stab yourself in the eye, I guess. These are really handy for putting on your lashes, for like plopping them on and then squeezing them on. And then finally, when it comes to applying gems, if you're wondering where I get my sort of like rhinestones and gems from, these are all just from Amazon. I would just do a tiny dot of glue. Wait, I don't actually want a gem there. I was gonna do it on my upper lash line. Oh well, I've committed now. And then these tools actually came with one of my packs of gems, but you can also buy them separately. These are like some tiny little lethal tweezers, if I'm honest. Maybe would not recommend if you're a beginner, because it's quite fiddly to actually pick the bloody things up. Oh shit, I just dropped that one on the floor. Actually so fiddly, and I keep dropping them, so would not necessarily recommend that application method. Instead, a little wax pencil, which again, this came with one of these packs of gems, but you can buy them on Amazon, and it's just waxy enough to pick up the gem. Oh, I think that looks really weird. I kind of look like I'm crying. Oh well, yeah, little wax pencil, your best friend. Right, let me get some lipstick on. This is the Mina lip pencil in 503, and then this is the YSL Rouge Velupt Shine lip in 122, I think is the shade name. It's like this really pretty brown colour, like a really rich warm brown. I think that just looks really weird because I'm so pale at the moment. Let's lighten it up. Okay, good. I feel like that lip goes a lot better when I have less crazy looking makeup. This is just a Maybelline lipstick in 177 Bare Reveal. And there we go, that's my slightly weird makeup look. But those are all of the tools. Let me zoom you out and quickly tell you how I wash said tools. So honestly, for the longest time, when it came to washing my sponges and my brushes, I would just use a soap. Like a bar of Dove soap, I found did the job so well. And every single day when I go to wet my beauty blender in the sink, I would just like give it a quick little rub on the soap and then rinse it underwater and it will come out perfectly clean. However, if you're looking for something that's easier to travel with, and something that I've been using recently just because Chloe did send me one of these from her brand, which again was Coco Cosmetics, is now Clomana, the brush soaps. These smell so good. This one was the strawberry and chocolate one, I'm pretty sure. I did actually wash all of my brushes in this the other day. You just like wet your sponge, wet your brush, swirl it around in here, and then like wring it out in the sink and repeat if you need to. But because it comes with a lid, you can take it traveling, which is really handy. So you're not like bringing a block of soap. For washing eyeshadow brushes, or if you're a makeup artist and you're doing sort of like a spot clean, actually no, I'm not a makeup artist, I'm not trained in cleaning brushes, so don't take my advice on this. However, I would imagine this would be very helpful if you were a makeup artist. ISO Clean, this stuff is so good. I've tried the Cinema Secrets brush cleaner as well. That one is nice, but I slightly prefer the ISO Clean. I feel like it doesn't leave as much of a film on my brushes. I feel like a really dirty brush. Let's take this one for example. This is like an old, I think a Lottie London brush, which is like really dirty and it's got like brown and orange eyeshadow on there. With ISO Clean, I would recommend putting a little bit of this. I think it did come with a cup to put it in. Don't have that cup currently. Also, they do a spray version, which is probably a lot easier, but I'm just going to show you by putting a tiny bit onto a bit of kitchen roll and then taking the brush and just like swirling it in that. And it's a lot easier if you actually dip the brush into a little bit of this. But can you see already, like just from that one bit of ISO Clean, like can you see how much cleaner this brush is? And actually, if I just turn this over and use the little bit that's soaked through to the other side, I don't even think I need any more product on there. If I just like brush that, look at the difference. And because it's heavily alcohol based, it really dries your hands out if you get it like all over your hands, so try not to do that. But the brushes dry so quickly. It's so good, so I'd highly recommend that. Cleaned all of my eyeshadow brushes with that and it was so quick and easy, and I used like one piece of kitchen roll. You can obviously use that on your face brushes as well, but I think it would just take a little bit longer, especially if you've been using a foundation brush for a while and it's got like a lot of build up. It would probably take quite a lot of the ISO Clean to actually get it all off. I really hope that this video was helpful. Those are all of my makeup tools. Oh, and I also use the ISO Clean to clean my powder puffs. I forgot to say that as well. And obviously you don't have to buy individual brushes from every one of these brands. Some of them are sold in sets, some of them are sold individually. What I'm saying is just things that are similar to these type of brushes, I would recommend. And I've got to say, I would love to actually have my own makeup brush set because I have now narrowed it down to like my everyday brushes that I would pick, you know, my favorites from each of those that I spoke about. And I feel like I could create like the perfect brush set. Yeah, I don't know, whether it's like an own brand thing, whether it's a collab with a brand. If you're a quality brush brand and you're looking to do a collab, hit me up. But anyway, that is me. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please give this a thumbs up. If you like my kind of videos, then feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you. Let me know down below if there are any other brushes that you think are good or affordable. I will leave loads of links down below. There are obviously tons more that I didn't even mention that are really good. I will see you in my next video. Bye.